Welcome back, my dear students. This is lecture 7 in ethics, in business ethics. And I will move forward directly to share the screen and go forward for what we came for today. And here we go. So just this another book, and the title and the of the book is here, down in this browser. I use this book just to take some synopsis of the idea of the writer. The link is down here. And the first thing is that just we want to know about is acting morally while doing business is no longer joking. So that means that the ethics in business is actually crucial now. It's very important to deal with the business ethics. Very important to deal with the business ethics. It's not only like a joke, no, but it's very important to do this, or even questionable topic of discussion. The second sentence is I'm taking synopsis sentences from this book, and actually it's including a very wealthy information. Business ethics is considered with doing what is right over what's wrong. So I'm telling myself what's supposed to be done, and I'm doing what's supposed to be done. This is the right part. I'm doing the right part. While acting is helpful or harmful way, and with over harmful way. So I'm looking for the helpful more than I'm looking for the harmful way, and we're seeking the common goods as well, our own welfare. Because ethics will not get contradicted with these principles, with the welfare, with the goods, and so on. So ethics got no hand to do with this, but at least it will not be preventing from the welfare and from the good. I'm talking about the ethics. Values. Now we'll talk about the values. Values and transactions, and of being between individuals, groups, and companies, and their global alliances. Stakeholder theory and management in particular are what concerns non-financial as well as financial aspects, business behavior, policies, and actions. So all these are the areas which we apply the business ethics. Now we'll go for further and know about the business ethics affect our professional and personal relationships, careers, and lives. And this text attempts to identify and help analyze many of these issues and opportunities for change using relevant ethical framework and reasoning. So the talk is about that the ethics is not of a joke now, is not a fun. Ethics mandatory for all business enterprises all over the world, and we'll see now why it is very important to apply the ethic rules and ethic principles elsewhere. Here is the book contents. I will go here to the most important sentences, which I find is very crucial here, and some examples as well. Stakeholder analysis is one of the most comprehensive approaches for identifying issues, groups, strategies, and outcomes. Okay. Mapping the who, what, and when, and where, and why, and how of ethical problems relating to organization and their stakeholders are also one of the stakeholders and issues management analysis. We are studying the management analysis for this reason. In this book, actually, it's a very wealthy book. It defines the business ethics in the chapter 1, and chapter 2 has exchanged like discussion of ethics at the personal and professional and organizational and international levels. In chapter 3, there is introduction, action-oriented method of studying social responsibility. So here, we will start to talk about the social responsibility. And actually, we covered this in another book before. We covered this concept in another book about the social responsibility, relationships, and the individual employees groups at work. And chapter 4 in this book is presenting ethical issues and problems and how the firms face the external circumstances, the consumers, the government, the environmental groups, and how moral can and should corporations be and act in commercial dealings. Do we have to apply the ethical rules or no? Do corporations have a conscience? Which we hear this word before, conscience. We hear the word conscience when we were talking about the values, because we said the value is internal, it's conscience inside you. Classic and recent crises resulting from corporate and environmental problems are covered here. And what these problems happen from? Not committing to the ethical rules, and it leads to a lot of problems. Explain ethical problems that consumers face in marketplace. This is chapter 5. Chapter 6 is talking about presents the corporation as internal stakeholder and discusses ethical leadership, strategy, structure, alliances, cultures, and systems as dominant themes regarding how to lead, manage, and be responsible followers in organizations of today. 7 focuses on the individual employee stakeholder and examine the most recent new and changing workplace trends. Chapter 8 is talking about the ethics and the leadership and the relationship between the ethics and the leadership. So competencies, ethical and leadership competencies of new entrants into global workforce and are introduced. Before moving to the discussion of the global and multinational enterprises and ethical issues between, so is it important for the M&E multinational enterprises to work ethically or no? To follow the ethical rules or no? It's, of course, the answer is very inevitable. It's very important, a very crucial idea, and it must M&E must follow the ethical rules as well. It must, because not following the ethical rules now will lead to, as a specific example, the pollution in the environment and increasing in unemployment. And all these are consequences of not following the ethical rules. Okay. Another problem that here, we will hear some words like globalization, like the word globalization, and presented along with stakeholders. Stakeholders are anyone who's having a benefit in dealing with the organization or the company, who monitor corporate responsibility, international negotiations techniques for professional responsibilities. Reasonably doing business abroad are presented here also in this chapter. Okay. Then also in this book, there are cases, ethical cases and the solutions and so on. Then we move forward into another practical part. In dealing in this book, we see here now business ethic and the changing environment. The business ethics and the changing environment. So sorry, I have to go back. Here we go, here we go, here we go. Let me move forward here now. And sorry about that. We'll go, at least you're navigating the book with me, including wealthy, educational purposes. Here we go. Business ethics and changing environment. Now, the changing environment. Changing environment, which you see here, the changing environment, particularly in the last decades, using the internet is changing everything. Today, using internet is changing everything. The way we communicate, relate, read, shop, bank, study, listen, or music. So using the mobile phones, the business and governments operates in and are disrupted by changing technological. So we have a rapid change in the technology and the legal and the economic and the social and the political environment. All these we have changes and competing stakeholders and power claims as many Middle Eastern countries in particular experiencing. So this is also another problem we are having, which necessitate the needs for ethical, following the ethical rules. Who are the stakeholders? We hear always about the stakeholders, but who are those stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders? Are individuals, companies, groups, and even government and their subsystems that cause and respond to external issues and opportunities and so on. Corporate scandals, globalization, deregulations, merger, technology. See, all those are such changes in the environment which we are living in nowadays. The globalization and the word globalization means that the world became like a small village. Deregulations, merger, technology, and global terrorism have accelerated the rate of change and brought about the climate of uncertainty for the stakeholders must make business and moral decisions. Issues concerning questionable ethical and illegal business practices confront everyone. Everyone is confronted with the ethical issues. So those things together, like the globalization, the regulation, the merger, the technology, all this make it necessitate to follow the ethical rules. The supreme lending crisis in 2008, everyone know about it. There was a very hard deflation and recession. And this involved stakeholders as varied as consumers, banks, mortgage companies, real estate firms, and homeowners. Many companies that sold mortgage to unqualified buyers lied about how the risk and high return products. So there was telling lies in that just to justify the business to work. There were some bodies in financial institutions, they said lies about the mortgage, about the returns, about the risk and the return relationship, which was a big problem at that time. And it was considered a kind of ethical problem. The debate continues over excessive pay to those chief executive officer, CEO, who posted poor corporate performance. So he wants to say that though these people, they had like they made losses and they didn't make high profits in their own, they didn't achieve high profits in their organization. But personally, they had bonuses, very high bonuses. How come? What the relationship? The high bonuses should be for the good profit achievements by the company. But here, low profit achievement by the companies, and at the same time, high personally bonus. They took high bonus for themselves, and at the same time, they didn't achieve high profits for their organizations. And this is also an issue about ethical issue. Also, politically, which is one of the main major also variables that leads also to affect on the organizations around, because it's around the organization affecting it. Also apply the political the ethical morals and need to apply the ethical morals. Some critics on the right of the political spectrum argue that companies are becoming over-regulated since the scandal of 2008. Others argue there is not sufficient regulations of the largest financial companies. Okay, you want to lead us and tell us, does ethical rules have to be regulated and written or no? And actually, for the business, it must be written. Also, the use of the reports, we are talking about now the necessity for having a business ethics, the necessity for having a business ethics. Now, this necessity escalated and became more and more. There is more and more need for ethical rules, particularly after those variables affected the business environment. Those variables, as example, like the type of economy, the political system, the rapid change in technology, those all are factors that affect the business and makes it very important for the business to engage in highly engage in business ethics. So here also, there are large macro level issues underlying many ethical dilemmas that affect business. The ethical dilemma is that you are trying to achieve one of two positive goals, and you have to choose one, but both are positive. And in the same time, the ethical dilemma is what to do. What to do. We said before the example of the coffee. Let me remind you with the example of the coffee. The example of the coffee that I will bring, I'm an importer here in Canada now, and I want to import coffee. I have two countries, X and Y. X country is an evil country that treat the employees and the workers in the coffee field bad treatment. They have low pays and so on. But this X country can export to me the coffee. I can import the coffee from this country for $2 per LB. But there is another country, which is a good country, that treats the employees or the workers in the field of coffee in a good way, but they have a high pay. But this company will give me the coffee, the LB, for $5. So I'm between two things. Apply the ethical dilemma, I apply the ethical rules, and take it from the good company. Why? But I will take the coffee with $5 per LB. So my profits will be lower. So I'm between two alternates. A lower profits with applying the ethical rules, or a higher profits with not applying the ethical rules. Which one I would choose then? Which one I would choose? And how I will work on this file. This is the point. It's not always a good business is ethical business. No, it doesn't work like this. But ethicals are very important to put in consideration when we make a decision. Okay, so here, and professional as well, individual lives, before discussing stakeholder theory and the management approach that is based on how these perspectives and methods can help individuals and companies better understand how to make more socially responsible decisions, we take a brief look at the broader environmental forces that affect industries, organizations, and individuals. Okay. what he wants to say, the writer here. Today, more than ever, the traditional boundaries between politics, cultures, technology, finance, and security and ecology are disappearing. So the boundaries are disappearing between these. So he wants to say that all these are interacting with each other and affect your company. All these variables together, like the political, security, finance, technology, culture, politics, all these are interacting with each other and affecting on the organization. And that means that I have to follow the ethical rules just to defend myself partially from these changes. You often cannot explain one without referring to the others. So they are tied to each other. There is no boundary between, there's a big correlation between them. There's a big correlation between them. And you cannot explain the whole without reference to them all. So this is, he wants to say, here the writer wants to say, those variables are not independent. They are all dependent and they are all affect any company or any organization. That's why one of the reasons why we have to take the ethical rules in consideration, just to avoid the problems which come from these variables. Okay. Those are some examples for breaching or conducting unethical behavior. So as example, companies and persons and individuals that conducting unethical behavior. As example, unlawful downloading. He's saying here 30,000. The Recording Industry Association of America, on behalf of its members, companies, and copyright owners, has sued more than 30,000 people for unlawful downloading. Yeah. New technologies and trends towards digital consumption have made intellectual property both more critical to business bottom line and more difficult to protect. So the copyrights, this is another point. With the digital medias now, and how to protect your product, this is another point. No companies, big or small, look at this, no companies, big or small, is immune to the IP protection challenges. Illegal downloads of music are not the only concern because there is illegal download for any other products. A new wave of lawsuits is being filed against the individual who illegally download movies through sites like Napster and BitTorrent. Also, the digital books are also now in play. You find it in China and everywhere. There are lawsuits against it. Privacy activities argue that IP address, which identifies the subscriber, but not the person operating the computer, is private, protected information that can be shown during criminal but not civil investigation. Okay. These are some points here I would like to talk about regarding the increasing. He won't say that we have increasing breaching to the ethical rules. There is increased numbers in breaching and violating the ethical rules, like the unlawful downloading and so on. And so then downloading is not only in music, but in films and movies and books and so on. Environmental forces and stakeholders. So here we go to environmental forces and stakeholders. Environmental forces and stakeholders. Let us see this. Environmental forces and stakeholders. And this is our own. Just I want to make it small first, then I will increase the size right now. But like you see here, any organization is affected by those factors. So the organization here in the middle, like you see here, this is the organization, and it's affected, if you see here, it is affected by political forces, economic forces, legal forces, and governmental and demographic forces, and technological forces. All this, like you see the arrows, check out, you can see here the direction of the arrows. All this affect on the performance of the organization. This is all we want to say, that there is a necessities or needs. There's a very inevitable need, or a very crucial need, for applying the ethical rules, especially in business. Organizational individuals are embedded in an and interact the multiple changing local, national, and international environment. The above discussion illustrates these environments are increasingly merging into a global system of dynamically interrelated interaction among business and the economy. So we must think, look at this, we must think globally before acting locally. So even if you are working locally, but think globally. Think of the culture, not only your culture only, or think about the cultures around you. Look at here in Canada as example. If you go to any workplace, you will find diversity from all the backgrounds are working in the same place. Everyone is carrying his own norms, his traditions, his culture, and all come in one place together. So it doesn't mean that I know only my culture, and it's not important that I know the cultures of the others. No, I have to know the cultures of the others as well. In many situations, the macro level environmental forces shown in the figure affect, look at this, those forces, those political, economic, so it affects the performance and operation of industries. Look at this, affect the performance and the operation of industries, like you see here, and the jobs itself. So all these effects. So here we say the environmental dimension affecting industries, organization, and jobs. The model. Then we'll talk about every one of them. We'll talk a part about every one of them. So as example, the economic environment, countries to evolve into a more global context of trade market. So even those companies which work locally, we said this before, they have to think about working internationally or globally, and think about knowing the cultures of the others, knowing about the regulations in the other countries, and so on. Companies are expected business and products overseas. Stock and bonds markets, volatility in the whole world. The volatility means ups and downs of the stock market across international regions, and are unprecedented. You cannot predict it, including the European market and the future of the euro, and so on. So this whole economic environment. Technological environment is, like we said before, it's going on in a very speed way. It's moving rapidly and it's changing rapidly. So we have to be aware of these, all the technological environment. And like as example, online social networking and near coincidence, connectivity, and the internet, all this we have to know, because this also affect about the economic, the industry, the companies, and the jobs. Electronic democracy, like you see now, electronic democracy is changing also now. You have the election, and the political acts goes within the internet. Everybody can see it and everybody can practice it. The government and legal environment continue to create regulatory laws. So the government and the environment, government always trying to protect the environment by setting laws. And each law also, including the ethical, written ethical laws, to regulate and to let down the pollution levels labels, and so on, to protect consumers and restrict unfair corporate practices. Several federal agencies are also changing or ignoring standards for corporations. Uneven regulations and fraudulent and anti-competitive practices affect competitions, stakeholders, shareholders, and consumers. Legal questions also affect the demographic, and the demographic is the characteristics of the people in somewhere in the characteristics of the people. The distribution of ages, like when you divide this society into denominations with the ages, like children or adults or old or seniors and so on, or if you divide the society or a community or a particular place into based on the gender, like men, women, or whatever, so all this will affect on the also affecting the company's decisions, especially when you are up to the marketing campaigns, advertising campaigns, all this. So you have to know about the demographics of the people and the social environment as well. So the conclusion, we'll go to the conclusion now in this book. These environmental factors are incorporated into a stakeholders and issues management approach that also includes an ethical analysis of externals and internal factors. These factors, external and internal, to organization. The larger perspective underlying these analytical approaches is represented by the following question. What is the question? How can the common goods of all stakeholders in controversial situation be realized? So came the time now to talk about the stakeholder management approach. How do companies in media, political groups, consumers, employees, competitors, and other groups responded in socially ethics and responsible ways when they affect and are affected by an issue, dilemma, threat, or opportunity from the environment just described? What is the reaction? The stakeholder theory expands a narrow view of corporations from a stakeholders only perspectives to include the many stakeholders who are also involved in how corporations envision the future, treat people and the environment, and serve the common goods for the company. Implementing this view starts with understanding the ethical, and here we go. So I can't do anything without the ethical point of view first, and moral understanding that corporations that use the natural resources and the environment must serve, as well providing for those who buy their products and services. Here we go for the stakeholder theory. And I said before, what do you mean by the stakeholders? The stakeholders are those who have benefits to deal with the company directly or indirectly, like a direct way and a direct way, who's having a relationship and benefits with your company. With this, we call them stakeholders. The stakeholder theory begins to address these questions by enabling individuals and groups to articulate collaborative win-win strategy based on what? Identify and prioritizing the issues, threats or opportunities, mapping who the stakeholders are, identifying the stake interests and power sources, showing who the members of the coalitions are or may become, showing what each stakeholder's ethics are, developing collaborative strategies and dialogue from a higher ground perspective, to move plans and interactions to the desired closure for all parties. That was about the stakeholders. Now, who are the stakeholders? And this is very important, and this figure will show me the secondary stakeholders groups. We said we are studying the stakeholders theory to understand the value of applying the business, the ethical ethics in business. So the secondary stakeholder group consists of locally community groups, like you see here, special interest groups, consumer groups, but the primary, the media also is secondary. We have also society at large. Society is at large also is considered secondary stakeholder. This is because the book is issued in America, so it's writing American Civil Liberties Group also is considered a secondary stakeholders. Those are all the levels of the secondary stakeholder, but the primary stakeholders are inside this circle, like you see here. Environmental groups also, these are secondary. Consumer groups, we said consumer groups before. Okay, so those are the secondary stakeholders, but the primary stakeholders are the owners, the suppliers, the customers, and the employees. Those are the primary stakeholders. We'll stop here for the moment and ask some questions about what we had here. About what we had here. We will have some questions. The first example is the changing environment needs to take ethics into consideration. Discuss. This is the first question in this part. And the second question here today is either it was primary or secondary stakeholders group ethical business or ethics of business or business ethics. Let's say business ethics matters or matters. Either it was a primary or secondary stakeholder groups, business ethical matters. And this also comment, we'll say here comment. So we have two questions here actually about these points, which we're heading now. The changing environment needs to take ethics into consideration. So we'll discuss this question. Either it was primary or secondary stakeholder groups, business ethics matters. Comment. comment or discuss. It's the same meaning, comment or discuss. Those two questions are very important to us right now in our studying for the business ethics. Shall stop here about 5 minutes, then we will go to the next video. I just want you to have your answers for the first question here and for the second questions of today. Thank you so much. Those were the two questions. Either it was primary or secondary stakeholders groups, business ethics matters, and we saw the primary groups and the secondary groups. And we had also the environmental changes that is occurring and affecting on the business also make it very necessary to have ethic norms in business. Shall see you on the next lecture. Stay safe. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.